What's up? What's up? What's up? What's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome back. Welcome back to another one. It's your boy Psycho number one. Welcome back for another action. We ain't gonna hold. I gonna get straight to it. So see what's going on. So we can see what's going on. Alaska, 600 traffic, 600 arrested for trafficking. 600 arrested in California for trafficking here.
And 14 children being rescued.
And these children did not come from one place. They came from Chicago, from Oklahoma, from Missouri, tribal lands in the Muskogee Creek Nation, and from communities right here in the state of California.
This operation makes it very clear that California will absolutely not be a refuge to predators.
How embarrassing that I can actually say we have corridors of human sex trafficking throughout Los Angeles County.
Hey,
From the outside, the homes looked completely normal. Quiet neighborhoods, families living nearby, nothing that would immediately raise suspicion. But investigators in California say some of those houses were hiding something very different inside. Authorities say a network of residential brothels had been operating quietly across multiple cities. People were arriving for short visits. Cash was changing hands, and advertisements were appearing online, directing buyers to the same locations. When law enforcement finally launched a coordinated operation, the results were staggering. More than 600 people were arrested. Investigators say it became one of the largest brothel crackdowns in California this year. And according to authorities, the investigation all began with something surprisingly small: a tip about suspicious activity at a single house. According to investigators, the case didn't begin with a large police raid or a major criminal investigation. It started with something much smaller. Residents in several California neighborhoods began reporting activity at certain homes that didn't seem normal. Cars were arriving throughout the day and late into the night. Visitors would enter the house, stay for a short period of time, and then leave. Sometimes another vehicle would arrive only minutes later. At first, the reports sounded like isolated complaints. Busy houses aren't unusual in large cities, but the pattern continued. Neighbors noticed the traffic happening almost every day. Some residents told authorities the activity seemed organized, as if people already knew exactly where they were going. Investigators began taking a closer look. Detectives started reviewing complaints from different neighborhoods and comparing the reports. That's when something unusual stood out.
Detectives from the Los Angeles Regional Human Trafficking Task Force investigated a citizen complaint about a suspected residential brothel in the city of Walnut.
The same pattern was appearing in multiple locations across the region. Different houses, different cities, but the same type of activity. Short visits, frequent traffic, and online advertisements that appeared to reference those locations.
hey man, that's why it's kind of scary not to know who living next door to you and what they got going on, but it's also scary to know. Like this is nothing that's new. It's been going on. We've been knowing about this situation that I would say almost kind of got normalized. You know what I'm saying? So it's something we gotta really take note of. And honestly, right now, speak on it. But that's real scary to not know the person is that's next door. That's scary for them not to know you. Okay, so they don't know who you are. You know what I mean? Like, way different neighborhood, different city, the same operation. The same motion? Yeah, that's organized. That's organized worldwide. Sound like.
Initially looked like a few suspicious houses, was starting to resemble something much larger. So investigators began monitoring some of the properties more closely,
leading to months of surveillance and information gathering. A coordinated multi-location search warrant operation involving multiple law enforcement agencies, including an investigator from the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, identified several residential brothels in the city of Walnut.
Surveillance teams started documenting when vehicles arrived and how long visitors stayed. And the more they watched, the more the pattern became clear. Some of the homes weren't just busy. Investigators believed they were being used as illegal brothels operating inside ordinary residential neighborhoods. But as detectives continued gathering evidence, another discovery made the case even more concerning. Because the houses investigators were watching didn't appear to be connected to just one operation. As detectives continued watching the houses they had identified, the activity became impossible to ignore. Vehicles arrived throughout the day. Some stayed only 10 or 15 minutes. Others left even faster. Investigators say the pattern looked very similar to what they often see in illegal sex operations.
How embarrassing that I can actually say we have corridors of human sex trafficking throughout Los Angeles County.
But surveillance alone wasn't enough. Detectives needed to understand how people were finding these locations in the first place. That's when investigators began looking online. Officers started reviewing websites known for hosting escort-style advertisements. And before long, they began noticing something unusual. Several advertisements appeared to reference locations that matched the neighborhoods investigators were already watching. The ads didn't always list the exact address. Instead, they gave general areas or instructions about where the meeting would take place. But when detectives compared the timing of the ads with the traffic they were seeing at certain homes, the connection started to become clearer. People responding to those advertisements were being directed to residential properties. From the outside, the houses looked like any other home on the street. There were no signs advertising a business. No obvious indication that anything illegal was happening inside. But investigators believe the properties were being used as brothels operating quietly inside residential neighborhoods.
We want to turn her over to somebody who really can just give them that love and wraparound services till we get them off the streets and either back to their homes. And something that was discussed is a lot of these victims are young children who run away from home, and they're from all over the country.
And as detectives dug deeper, they realized something even more surprising. The houses didn't appear to be operating independently. Evidence suggested that multiple properties might be connected to the same broader network. That meant the activity investigators were seeing in one neighborhood could be happening in many others. What started as a small investigation into suspicious activity at a few houses was now turning into something much larger. Authorities began coordinating with additional
Sounds like a Rico. Yeah, somebody finna get indicted like a mother. A lot of people finna get indicted with this. Sounds like a Rico. Yeah, 600 already done went down. There's more people than that. It's just out of a matter of time when they're gonna start snitching. Trying to get some time off that case.
law enforcement agencies across the region. Because if these properties were connected, investigators would need a much bigger operation to shut them down. And soon, that's exactly what they began preparing for. As investigators continued gathering evidence, it became clear the case was no longer limited to a handful of houses. Detectives believed multiple properties across California might be connected to the same network. That meant shutting it down would require more than a small local investigation. Authorities began coordinating with additional law enforcement agencies across the state. Local police departments, sheriff's offices, and specialized investigative units started sharing information about similar complaints in their own jurisdictions. When investigators compared the report,
I was about to say, they need to get all the cities and states involved, be on one page, with that's what they said they did, and look like they gonna bring the U.S. Marshal in this month. Ooh, man, so whoever's involved with this, man, got a little piece of the pie going on with this, boy. Boy, they coming. You see it now? They coming. I know I'm a month behind with this too.
the pattern looked familiar. Several cities were seeing the same thing. Homes with constant traffic, short visits from people arriving alone, and online advertisements directing buyers to nearby locations. What appeared to be isolated incidents were starting to look like pieces of a much larger system. To confirm the connection, investigators began running undercover operations. Officers responded to some of the online advertisements the same way a buyer might. They sent messages, asked questions, and attempted to arrange meetings. The conversations were carefully documented as evidence. Investigators say many of the responses followed a predictable pattern. Once contact was made, instructions were provided about where to go and when to arrive.
They got
Sometimes the
smart
address
with
was given directly. Other times, the buyer would be directed to a nearby location before receiving final instructions. Each conversation gave detectives another piece of the puzzle. The evidence suggested that the houses investigators had been watching were not random. They appeared to be part of a network using residential properties to conduct illegal sex operations while avoiding attention. By the time authorities believed they had enough evidence, planning began for a coordinated operation. Multiple agencies would need to act at the same time. Undercover meetings would be arranged. Search warrants would be executed. And investigators hoped that when the operation finally moved forward, they would be able to dismantle the network they had spent weeks tracking. What they didn't yet know was just how many people were connected to the operation. Because when the arrests began, the numbers would quickly grow far larger than investigators initially expected. With multiple agencies now involved, investigators began focusing on one of the most important parts of the case, confirming exactly what was happening inside the houses. Surveillance teams continued monitoring several of the properties investigators had identified. Officers documented when vehicles arrived. They recorded how long visitors stayed, and they watched the steady flow of people coming and going throughout the day. According to investigators, many of the visits were brief. A person would arrive, enter the house, and leave within minutes. Soon after, another visitor would appear. The pattern repeated again and again. But investigators also needed stronger evidence,
That's
linking the
crazy
activity
work.
to the online advertisements they had discovered. That's where the undercover operations became critical. Detectives
Yeah, that's
began
crazy
responding
work.
directly to some of the ads the same way a buyer might. They sent messages and asked about availability. In many cases, the conversations moved quickly. Investigators say suspects
Crazy work. I mean, there's no difference in operation and how you are doing it. Whether what city or state you're in, you're still doing it the same way. So once you get the pattern and understand the pattern, you can then, you know what I'm saying, execute whatever you're trying to execute or do whatever you're trying to do. In this case, it's the police. So what they trying to do is catch you. They trying to bush you. So I mean, they went to the length just to make sure that they got you, as far as pretending like they are buyers. So that right there alone just lets you know they trying to get a little craftier with how they catch you. So y'all gonna have to come up with something. I'm not encouraging y'all to say, I'm just saying, it's not worth it, man. It ain't good for you. Come on, man. What we doing?
On the other end of the conversation would provide instructions about how to arrange a meeting. Sometimes they gave a general location first. Other times, they directed the person to a nearby area before providing the final address. The messages were carefully documented as investigators continued building the case. Eventually, some of those conversations led to scheduled meetings. Undercover officers would arrive at the location while surveillance teams monitored the property from nearby. These meetings allowed investigators to confirm that the houses were being used for illegal activity. Each operation added more evidence. The online messages, the surveillance, and the controlled meetings arranged by undercover officers. By the time the investigation reached this stage, authorities believed they had enough information to move forward. But the final phase of the operation would require careful coordination. Because investigators were preparing to carry out arrests and searches across multiple locations at the same time. And once the operation began, the number of suspects involved would grow far larger than many investigators expected. As the investigation continued, detectives began piecing together how the operation appeared to function. According to authorities, the houses investigators had been monitoring were not operating independently. Instead, they appeared to be part of a system that used multiple residential properties to run illegal sex businesses while avoiding attention. If activity at one location slowed down or attracted suspicion, another location could be used instead. Investigators believe the network relied heavily on online advertising to connect buyers with the houses. Advertisements posted on escort-style websites directed people to contact someone through messaging apps. Once communication began, the person arranging the meeting would provide instructions about where to go. Sometimes the address was sent directly. Other times, buyers were directed to a nearby intersection or parking area before receiving the final location. Authorities say this method made it harder for investigators to identify the exact addresses connected to the operation. But once detectives began comparing the messages, the same locations kept appearing. The investigation also revealed another important detail. Some of the individuals working inside the houses appeared to move between different locations. Investigators believe this allowed the operation to continue running, even if one property temporarily shut down. From the outside, the homes still looked completely ordinary. Neighbors saw houses that appeared quiet most of the time. But investigators say the activity inside told a very different story. Visitors arriving for short periods of time, cash transactions, and a steady stream of people coming and going throughout the day. By the time authorities prepared to move forward with the operation, investigators believed they were dealing with a network operating across multiple cities. That meant the final phase of the investigation would have to be coordinated carefully. Search warrants would be executed, undercover operations would continue, and arrests would be made across several locations. What investigators didn't know yet was just how large the numbers would become. Because when the operation finally moved forward, authorities say more than 600 people were arrested as part of.
No, that's what I'm saying now. There's way more people than that. Y'all just ain't ran across them yet. Like, it's more than that. So, at the end of the day, when we get through, I can bet your high horses it's gonna be 1,000 to 3,000 people somewhere up in that range. Cause this investigation's not over with. It's just beginning. The show is just starting. You know what I mean? So we gotta understand this. There's more to come. There's more to come.
Of the statewide crackdown.
LA County Sheriff Robert Luna announcing the success of Operation Reclaim and Rebuild. It's a crackdown on human trafficking in California that led to more than 600 arrests, as well as 156 adults and 14 children being rescued.
After weeks of surveillance, undercover work, and gathering evidence, investigators were ready to move forward. Authorities began coordinating what would become one of the largest brothel crackdowns in California this year.
Human trafficking and child exploitation are devastating crimes that target the most vulnerable amongst us. This operation makes it very clear that California will absolutely not be a refuge to predators.
Multiple law enforcement agencies prepared to act at the same time.
My thing is,
Search warrants were issued.
like, my thing is, in order to run this operation, like one woman, it's okay to put herself in a situation to do that. Like one woman, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to wrap my head around that as I'm watching this. 'Cause this is it's outrageous for it to be organized that way. Like I feel like the women have to be willingly wanting to do that. You know what I mean? Or are they being forced to do this? That's my personal thinking on it as we're watching it. But no matter what the case is, you're busted. You're busted. But it's just something to think about though, like, you know what I mean?
Undercover meetings continued to be arranged, and officers positioned themselves near several of the properties investigators had been monitoring. When the operation finally began, arrests started happening across multiple locations.
Get your hands behind your back. I need another set.
There you go.
Some suspects were detained during undercover meetings arranged through online advertisements. Others were taken into custody during search operations carried out at residential properties connected to the investigation. Investigators say the operation moved quickly. Officers entered several locations, secured the properties, and began collecting evidence. Phones, cash, and digital records were among the items investigators documented as part of the case. As the arrests continued, the number of suspects involved in the operation kept growing. What investigators initially believed might involve a smaller group soon expanded into something much larger. By the time authorities announced the results of the operation, the numbers were staggering. More than 600 people had been arrested statewide.
Let's start with the arrests.
Yeah, good morning. What I talked about today were state arrest and local arrest. Our local arrest, 12 adults rescued, 5 children that were rescued, 18 suspected traffickers arrested, 79 sex buyers, people who are actually buying sex from these kids, which is actually heartbreaking.
Officials say the arrests included individuals suspected of organizing or facilitating the operations.
Statewide, obviously, there's a lot more numbers because this is a statewide effort. 155 adults rescued, 74 children rescued, 71 suspected sex traffickers arrested, 328 sex buyers arrested,
as well as people accused of attempting to purchase illegal sexual services. Authorities also reported identifying individuals.
Law enforcement officials held a news conference this morning revealing the victims were targeted,
who may have been victims connected to the network. Those individuals were offered assistance.
We have traffickers that are putting barely teenage girls out on the streets of Los Angeles to be victimized repeatedly over and over again.
Through organizations that work with law enforcement during trafficking investigations.
Among the victims, teenagers from all over the country, some as young as 13.
For investigators who had spent weeks tracking the activity, the results confirmed just how large the network had become. But even after the arrests were announced, the investigation was not necessarily over. Because authorities believe operations like this can quickly adapt and move to new locations if they are not fully dismantled. And that means investigators often continue monitoring similar activity long after the first arrests are made. Following the arrests, the cases began moving through the legal system as prosecutors reviewed the evidence collected during the investigation. Authorities say the operation involved large amounts of documentation gathered over several weeks. That evidence included surveillance records, undercover communications, and materials collected during the search operations. Investigators will now determine which suspects may face formal charges related to organizing or facilitating the brothel network, while others could face charges connected to purchasing illegal sexual services. Officials also say investigations like this often continue even after the first round of arrests, because networks operating in multiple locations can sometimes attempt to reorganize or relocate once their activities are exposed. Law enforcement agencies across the region say they will continue monitoring online advertisements and suspicious activity linked to similar operations,
leading to months of surveillance and information gathering. A coordinated multi-location search warrant operation involving multiple law enforcement agencies.
If they want to continue to crack down on this, that's what they're going to have to do. Keep a close eye on it to expose all of it. Otherwise, you're not going to get nowhere. It's going to stop at where you at, and it's going to continue. So you definitely going to have to like keep a bird's eye view on that. For sure, for sure.
Including an investigator from the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, identified several residential brothels in the city of Walnut.
Authorities also work with support organizations that provide assistance to individuals identified during investigations who may need help leaving exploitative situations. For investigators, cases like this demonstrate how illegal operations can sometimes operate quietly for long periods of time before they are discovered. From the outside, many of the houses involved in the investigation appeared completely ordinary. Neighbors often had no clear indication of what investigators say was happening inside. But once authorities began connecting the reports, the surveillance, and the online advertisements, the full scale of the network slowly came into view. And by the time the operation concluded, it had become one of the largest brothel crackdowns announced in California this year.
Until next time, it's your boy Psycho Twist. I would like for y'all to like, comment, subscribe, and share the live. And I'll see y'all next time. They definitely gonna have to keep an eye on that. Good job on what y'all did do though. But it's more than that that's out there.